Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I don't know what happened to all the copies. I guess people took them. You have access to it? Okay. On the website you can get it, source sheets. Every class has source sheets. Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. Bruchim Habayim. Thank you for gracing us. Today's class is gratefully dedicated by Rabbi Menachem Abrams and his family in tribute and honor of all of our Israeli soldiers fighting on the front lines to protect the Jewish people and all of the volunteer organizations helping our brothers and sisters. Hashem Yishmar Tseisam Avoya Me'atav Ad Olam. Amen. Thank you very, very much, Rabbi Menachem, and Atzlacha Rabbah. We are holding, I believe, Seif Test, page 296. 296, Perek Test, the 9th chapter. Valze Amar Moshe. Okay, so in the last class, we went on from focusing on Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama to focus on Chaya Yechida. The soul has 5 names, 5 dimensions: Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya Yechida. And as explained, Neshama is primarily connected to Seichel, understanding, especially Bina. Ruach is connected primarily to Midas, which is the emotional experience. Nefesh is connected to the liver and its actualization. All the elements that are connected to behavior and action. And each one is a special koyach in the nefesh. There's a fuse of the soul that processes reality through seichel. There's the fuse of the soul that processes reality through midas. There's the dimension of the soul that processes reality and is focused on, is sensitive to behavior. That's called nefesh. And we spoke about it both in the nefesh alikis, in the divine soul, and the nefesh abahamis, in the animal soul, and how the communication between the two happens. And he went on to explain at length the whole part of davening, of Atu Hashem Levadecha, all the way to Hashem choosing Avram Avinu and giving him the 7 tribes, the 7 nations within Eretz Yisrael, Vatakem es Dvarecha ki tzadik ata, making a covenant that all of these 7 tribes should be given over to Avram Avinu, which spiritually, every nekuda in Torah is not just a physical thing, but it's a spiritual thing, represents the 7 midas of the animal soul, that the 7 midas can be conquered. And when you conquer a nation, what does conquer mean? Conquer means you don't just destroy it, you transform it. There's 2 types of conquering. I conquer a country, you could just destroy the country and leave it with rubble and debris and move away. Just another churva like Ira Nidachas. And you don't rebuild it. But real conquest means you transform it. Becomes part of your territory, becomes part of your malchus, part of your kingdom. When they conquered the 7 tribes, they all became Eretz Yisrael. It became part of Eretz Yisrael, with the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. That became the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. So what that represents spiritually is something very, very profound. The ability to be able to work with the animal soul and its 7 midas to transform it. Vatakem es dvarecha ki tzadik ata. The main point was, there is a seder avodah of rejecting the sparks of saying this is not for me. But vatokim as dvarecha, because you're a tzaddik, tzaddik is midas hayisoid toiv, imru tzaddiki toiv. You want to always rescue and liberate and bring out the goodness. So therefore, vatokim as dvarecha, you rescued, you emancipated the dvarecha, the dvar Hashem, the divine word and energy within each one of these 7 midas, because behind every emotion and instinct and pattern there is a dvar Hashem. There's an energy, like we also learned in Basi Lagani, Erein Soif Lamata Adin Tachlis, that Va'ata Machaya is Kulam, Va'ata is Aleph Taf Hey, the letters from Aleph through Taf with the Hey, which are the 5 Maitzayis Hapeh, the 5 sources in the mouth from which we articulate all of the 22 letters. There's Hey Maitzayis Hapeh, that's Aleph Taf Hey, that's what it says in Tanya, that's Va'ata Machaya is Kulam, and that reaches all the way Lamata Mata Adin Tachlis. So Va'tokim as Dvarecha, this is a continuation to that idea. You have raised up your words. You raised up your words, meaning instead of the words being dormant and becoming repressed and becoming distorted through the shells, through the husks, you have liberated them, you have emancipated them, that the true inner divine core behind all the shells of these midas can become revealed, and that's how you transform the 7 midas. Every midah is serving some purpose. There's a reason for it. It's not stam in a vacuum. And when one really gets down to the core of it, there's an opportunity for healing, and even there's an opportunity for unburdening. There's an opportunity for healing, and there's an opportunity even for transformation, which is ultimately a major part of the avodah of a person. Then he went into the union of Chaya Yechida. Chaya is already higher than Neshama. And he explained at length, there's the difference of understanding something, which is also understanding it very clearly. We're not talking about, fake news, fake understanding. We're talking about understanding, but still understanding by definition is somebody else telling me a story. It's like my mind happens to be somebody else, but so to speak. In other words, proofs don't give you the reality. They tell you about a reality that lives somewhere else. Reality itself, this is what we call seeing is believing. Hakara, not just hasaga, but hakara. Like I explained the difference of simonim and tviyas ayin in Elam Metzias. Some people started to learn Mesachas Baba Metzias. It's going to become very relevant, the difference of simonim and tviyas ayin. And that's the difference of hasaga, comprehension, and hakara, recognition. And as he explained, when I hear a story from somebody else, or I deduce something through logical proofs, it may be very powerful and very compelling. But there's always an opportunity for another side. Kashya, tiyufta. Somebody else could come and contradict the story, like Eidim Zaymamin, right? They say, Yimanu Yisam. How can Bezdin believe these 2 witnesses that this and this happened when there's 2 other witnesses who say that these witnesses were with us in Australia that night? It couldn't have been true. So now I don't know, I'm left hanging, I don't know. I believed you, now I gotta believe you. And even if it's my logic, there's questions. Many a theory, many an idea, many hypotheses that have seemed very, very consolidated and powerful. And then a new instrument was revealed, or a new revelation emerged, or people have grown to think out of the box, and everything is refuted, or certainly expanded, or updated, or upgraded, and so forth. So as powerful as it is, ultimately, it's vulnerable in the sense that it can also be refuted. It's in that realm. Yeah.
But without the proofs per se, there was no way to talk about reality altogether.
Right.
So it's essential in a way.
Yeah,
to have
it's
a
true.
dialogue about something.
Yeah. Dialogue serves a tremendous purpose, and sometimes it's the beginning of introducing a new reality or a new concept of reality. And then there's a deeper level, called hakara, recognition. He calls it das chazak, and which can ultimately lead to something that's called re'iyah de chachma. It's like somebody seeing something. When I see it, you can ask me 1,000 questions. It's not going to change the reality. And the reason it's not going to change the reality is not because I'm stubborn, but because my connection to it is of a different nature. It's of an intimate. He says, like the child telling a child, this is your father, this is your mother. Yeah, it's not a proof, a logical proof. Even a child at an age where they're not shaykh to that types of svara, There's a visceral experience of this is my father and this is my mother. And even as we become older, that remains, even though now I can also have proofs. And relative to that experience, the proofs become not nothing there. They're significant, but they become irrelevant to the intensity of the relationship and the experience, as we discussed at length. Spiritually speaking, this is the concept of chaya, the ability of the soul of re'iyah de chachma, a recognition that is much deeper than the recognition that comes from understanding. It's a recognition that comes from when you see something. It's completely from within, and the authenticity is irrefutable. Then there's something yichida. And he explained that the difference of the bittul of chaya is a bittul atzmi versus a bittul hayesh, what he called it, a bittul that comes from outside, or a bittul that comes from within. Then there's something called yichida. What's yichida? This was the big idea. Yichida is a completely different dimension. It's the fifth dimension of the soul. We call it the quintessential core of the soul. Quintessence is a very good word. Essence means the essence of something. Quint in Greek is 5. Quint is 5, huh? Yeah, like a quintuplet. So quint is 5. So actually here that works well, quintessence, because Yichid is number 5. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya. And Yichid so it actually works very well. The quintessential core of the soul. And it's called Yichid from the word Yachid. Yachid, which means one, singular, Yichid liyachtach, Chavuka dvuka bach. And he says here, there's lechatchila no other mitzias that you have to be mevatel. Mitzad Yichid, there's no other mitzias, there's no other reality outside of Atzmos Mahus Ein Sof. And therefore, it's not like in the other madregas, even Chaya. Where Chaya, there's a relationship that is deeper than just emotion and deeper than just seichel. It's a relationship of the person seeing something, the person connecting to something in a very, very intimate way, very deep. And as we discussed what emunah means it's something that a question doesn't weaken it and an answer doesn't strengthen it, not because questions and answers are not important, but because they don't touch that realm of experience. Questions and answers deal with the world of seichel, and we have to respect that, and there's an integrity to that. But then there is transcending even that space, not because you're afraid of seichel, but because seichel can only do what it does best, which is figure things out intellectually, and thus bring and define reality from that perspective. And it's very valuable in that sense. But it doesn't have the ability to give you the experience, the intimate, the visual, visceral, spiritual experience of Ein Sof itself. This, the neshama needs chaya. That's higher, it's a transcendent experience. Yichida, but here, even here, as he said from Imrei Bina, there's the ayin that comes to be mevatel the yesh, and then there's the ayin be'etzem. In Yichidish Benefesh, Yichidish Benefesh is the core of the soul, which is rooted in the core of Atzmos. There's no struggle with the Nefesh Bahamas. Why? Because l'chatchila everything is one. That's the level of chavuka dvuka bach. Yichida liyachtach. You don't even call it bittul, because bittul means you're being mevatel something. You're nullifying something. Here he says there's l'chatchila no other mitzias that you have to be mevatel. There's no other mitzias. Mitzad atzmos Ein Sof, everything is subsumed in that reality, and therefore mitzad yichida is an absolute oneness that is completely all-encompassing, and it brings together all the faculties and all the thoughts and experiences and instincts of the soul. On the other levels, I can't bypass the other levels and say everything is one. As we said many times, when I do that prematurely, I'm just fooling myself, and it's going to backfire, right? It means either I'm disassociated or I'm disconnected from myself, so everything is one, or I don't understand what oneness is. But Yichida is already deeper than Nefesh, and deeper than Ruach, and deeper than Hashem, and deeper than Chai. On the other hand, it's not different than them. It's the essence of all of them. It's the Yichida of Nefesh, it's the Yichida of Ruach, it's the Neshama Chai, it's the Etzem, it's the essence of everything. Essence is the essence of everything. It doesn't negate, it doesn't compete. And we explained the different 4 parts of Torah. You have 4 parts of Torah. You have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya. And each one explores another layer of reality. Remember, Torah is the blueprint of the universe. So whatever exists in the universe exists first in Torah. Whatever exists in Torah is manifested in the universe because it's the blueprint. It says in Medrash, Hashem looked into the Torah and created the blueprint. So therefore, different dimensions of Torah capture and embody different layers of reality. It's like you have a microscope that can really zoom into different spectrums of reality, different layers of reality, and each one is real. Pshat is real, and Remez is real, and Drush is real, and Sod is real. It's Bria, it's Atziya, and Yitzira, Bria, and Atzilus. Yechida doesn't zoom into one layer. It captures the Yechida, the Atzmius of it. And there, the Ein Sof emerges, which includes everything. It's the Etzem of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya. When that comes out in the soul, it's not an union of bittul, of surrendering something, because there's lechatchila no metzias outside of Ein Sof. It's like God doesn't have to surrender to God. It's completely one union. That's the chiddush of Yechidah. And he says, just like you have it in Kedusha, Zel U'ma Za'asa Elikim. So the concept of Chaya, Yechidah, which is beyond Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, you have also an unholiness, and that's what Amalek represents. And as he explained, that there's two forms of arrogance. There's an arrogance, you remember, that's based on seichel. There's an arrogance that's not based on seichel. The same is true with hatred. There's a hatred, it's wrong, but it's somehow rational. In my own mind, I construe rational ideas that justify this hate. I may be wrong, I may be deceptive, I may be miscalculating. My mind may be playing games with me, I may have been fed wrong information, I may be suffering from other things. But somehow, in my own mind at least, there is a justification, there is a basis for this arrogance. He says sometimes people are very successful. And they're very talented people, they're very resourceful, they're very successful. And it gets to them. You could say it's not al pi seichel at all, it's al pi seichel. They're making a bad mistake, it's going to backfire, they're going to become miserable. But that's why the Navi has to say, Al yishalel chacham b'chachmasai, Gibor b'gvurasai, asher b'ashrai. Why does the Navi have to say it? You're a very intelligent person, you're a brilliant man, you're a very powerful person, and you're a very wealthy person. And when you walk into a room, everybody is busy bowing down to you. And what happens is you start believing them. You start believing them, right? That's the story of Haman. Everybody is bowing down to them, you start believing them. Why did he go crazy for Mordechai? Imagine you're a person, and every human being who sees you goes kodim for you. Every person. Imagine wherever you walk around, everybody wants a picture with you, everybody wants your autograph. It's the biggest honor for you to come to their bar mitzvah, to come to their event, to come to their dinners like winning the Nobel Prize. And not only that, the Melech said everybody has to bow down to you. And that's what happens. Kein Siva HaMelech.
But I'm saying there was a question why, because he was later worried about Haman's rise in power. So
later,
But he ordered initially.
That's
what the puzzle
Achashverosh commanded, So and it's amazing, and everybody, so any subject in the Persian Empire sees Haman, prostrates himself. It's hishtachva. It's not just you nod, like.
I thought they went down on their knee first.
They went down on the knee, they kneeled, and they prostrated themselves. Now there was one Jew, an old man. His name was Mordechai, right? And when he saw Haman pass, he was sitting with a Gemara, either Masechta Baba Kama, or Masechta Chulin, or Masechta Zvachim, right, with his glasses and reading it. And when he looked at her, he took a look, right? He gave him a look, and he went back to the Gemara. So Haman decided that he has to kill the entire nation. Why? Because one man, one stubborn Jew, is not bowing down to him. How crazy do you have to be? The pshat is that Haman knew that Mordechai has it right. Mordechai was the only one who had it right, and Haman knew Haman wasn't stupid. Nobody was choshish. Chashverosh says was a tippish, but Haman, it doesn't say he was a tippish. He even knew the Jewish calendar better than most Jews. Moshe's Yortzeit. He knew what's going on, Haman. He was a very deep person. Kmitza, Shabbos Hayom, Pesach Hayom. But when he saw Mordechai, he knew that everyone is busy lying. The whole world is lying. This man is actually real. And that drove him crazy, because he knew he's the only one who's authentic. And there's nothing you can do to destroy authenticity, right? Like the Kotzker Rebbe once said, Gewaldige word. It says in Medrash that when Hashem created the world, there was a split. Chesed Amar Yibare, and Emes Amar Al Yibare. Truth said, don't create the world because it's full of lies. And Chesed said, no, people will do Chesed, create the world. And then there was another debate between Tzedek and Shalom. Tzedek said, yeah, because they'll be tzedakah, and Shalom said everybody will be fighting, don't create the world. So what do you have? So you have 2 against 2. So what do? So Hashem took Emes and he threw it away. So now it's 2 against 1. So 2-1, win. Right? If you have a court split 2 against 2, so you take one of the judges, you kill him. And now you have 3, so it's good, gewaldig. So that Hashem took Emes, v'yishlicha laret, he threw it into the earth. That's why it says Emes me'eretz titzmach. Emes is deeply, deeply buried in the ground. We're looking for it everywhere. And, it's 5 feet under, maybe 100 feet under. So now it's great. Now you have Chesed and Tzedek against Shalom. 2 against 1. Achirab Latas, God creates the world. It's a very funny medrash. It's in Parshas Reishis, Parsha Ches. Amar Reb Simon said that this happened. The Kotzker Rebbe said, ask the Shai. So there's a lot of obviously a lot of depth there. There's a Maamar from the Alter Rebbe about it. Also, what's pshat in the Siddur, in his Siddur. But Kotzker Rebbe said, why did
It's very logical.
It's logical.
It's because there is no emes outside of Hashem, so it still remains.
So he asked the Shaila, why did he have to throw away Emes? Why didn't he throw away Shalom? There were 2 to throw away. Why did he get rid of Emes and not keep Emes? Then throw away Shalom. Will still be 2 against 1. Why was Emes the victim? Why was Shalom not the victim? That's what the Kotzker Rebbe said. You have Emes against Tzedek and Chesed. It's still 2 against 1. So he said something amazing. He said, when you have Emes, it's irrelevant if it's 2 against 1. It could be 2 billion against 1. The 1 is going to win. Achrei Rabim Lahatis means, right? Achrei Rabim Lahatis doesn't mean the majority is right. Majority is not right. Majority is not right. It was one of the Intifadas, the head of the UN said, are you going to tell me that the whole world is wrong and Israel is right? Yes, sir. Yeah. And when the whole world was quiet about the Holocaust, was the whole world wrong and the Jewish people were right? Yes, sir. You sometimes have a community that's covering up horrible things. And then there's one Meshugana that's screaming, right? You're going to tell me there's one person is right and everybody is wrong? Yeah. They're a bunch of criminals. Or they're scared, whatever they are, whatever you want to, they're scared. The moment you have Emes, it's not Negeya. You can bring me 1 billion votes. I don't care. Emes is going to win because it's Emes. Avart, huh? That's why he couldn't keep Emes here. With Emes, it's not 2 against 1. Shalom already. Shalom, okay, 2 against 1. Shalom. But Emes is a different Indian. It's passed for the Kotzker Rebbe also. This was his... It's very important to understand in life. Democracy is a very important, beautiful thing. Achrei Rabim Lahatis is a mitzvah in the Torah. Achrei Rabim Lahatis means when we're not sure what's Emes. So you have a Sanhedrin, and you have 71 people, and you take a vote, and you have to go Achrei Rabim, and that's the halacha. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the reason the halacha is like Beis Hillel is because the majority of the Sanhedrin paskin like Beis Hillel. And that's how it works. And that becomes the Ratzon Hashem. But it's a Tanai, that they're searching for Emes. They're not ignoring the Emes. If you're ignoring the Emes, I don't care if you have 7 billion Sanhedrin, it's irrelevant. They're all corrupt. They're a bunch of criminals. Kasher Rishayim Einem and Aminyan, the Gemara says. If you have a Sanhedrin of Rishayim, it's not a Sanhedrin. It's called Kasher Rishayim, a bond of gangsters. How did I get into this? I forgot. Oh, Mordechai, yeah. So Haman knew that. You can have 1 million people bowing down to you. It's like people with marriage, right? The whole world bows, celebrities, the whole world bows down to them besides their wife. So they get divorced. Why do you have to get divorced? Because your wife got it right. Everybody else is busy bowing down to you. Your wife is the only one who tells you the truth. Rabbi Yid, go, take out the garbage. What do you mean? 50,000 people just worshipped him at a concert? 50,000 people were ready to flatter him ad yom v'layla, and now take out the garbage. the Rebbe Ayatz writes that people would come to the city of Lubavitch, to his father, to the Rebbe Marash, to the Tzemach Tzedek. So some were very, very chashva people. He said the first bittul, the first bittush they got, which was very healthy to be able to come learn, to come experience Elikus. He said there was no train station over there. There was a train station nearby. If you know a little bit, Belarus, it's a really third world country, Ad Hayom. So it was a little shtetl. Lubavitch is a shtetl. It's still a shtetl. I was there once, a bunch of chickens roaming around with a few farmers living there, because the Germans destroyed everything. So there was a train station nearby, I think a place called, I forgot the city, a larger city where there was a train station. Huh? I don't remember. So from there were balei agolos, like we have taxi drivers by the airports, Ubers by the airports, or yellow cabs. So there were balei agolos, coach people, who would, when the people were coming off the stancia, the train, they would take them on the wagon and they would bring them to the city of Lubavitch. So he says there was one of the balei agolos there. It's called Pesha the Balagola. So he was durchgewegt with, in his own way, was durchgewegt with Chassidus. So Rabbi was coming, he said, Rebel, nem dein Pekel und chab sich herauf auf den Wagen. Take your bag and come onto the wagon. And this was, this was the healthy initiation. So when you have the Midas HaEmes, it's irrelevant how much opposition you have. So B'meila, Haman, it drove him crazy because he knew the emes. So here you have two types of gaiva. So you have an arrogance that the person drives themselves crazy, they make themselves miserable, but it's built through a seicheldika system. And that's why the Navi says, Al yishal chacham b'chachmasai. Yirmiyahu Navi says in chapter 9, don't let your chachma or your strength or your wealth or your brilliance get to your head. Realize that it's not koichi v'oitzim yadi. You're not responsible for it. You didn't give yourself all these gifts. Sometimes people think it's all me. And even if they know it's not them, but still they feel that they could demand it. So this creates a form of yeshus, a form of gaiva. And the same is true with many of the different midas that can destroy a person's life. But there's a seicheldika process. And therefore, you can, the way you absorb it is also the way you could spit it out. It came in through wrong information, it can come out through correct information. That's the process. Amalek represents something else. Amalek, it says, is chutzpah beloy taga. It's chutzpah without a crown. It's a king without a crown. He doesn't even need a crown. He doesn't even need a process of rationalization, of justification. It's like irrational hatred. Irrational hatred is hatred. It's not even based on a svara. It's not even based on a wrong svara. It's hard for people to believe such a thing exists. Because Yeah. And that's Amalek's hatred. Amalek's hatred is your existence drives me crazy. Not that your existence is a threat to me because I feel you want to take my territory or you want to destroy my family. Or you want to do something to me that will you want to take over like Parai had this perceived threat that the Jews will want to take over the country. Amalek didn't have this. He was living far away. Mind your own business. Live a good life. Why are you destroying your own life? To go into a war that's unprovoked, nobody's triggering you, nobody wants anything from you. They weren't even passing by his country, not even going around his country. The issue was the metzias of the Jew drove him crazy. Somehow he can't sleep at night if the Jewish people are in existence. And when he heard about Yitzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf and all the nations were overwhelmed with awe and reverence, Amalek said, I'm going to jump into the hot bath and make it cool. I'm going to get burnt. It's worth it. Because the pain of your existence is much worse than the pain of me getting destroyed, at least by knowing that I'll take you down. Imagine. Like the Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, who said, peace will come when the Arabs will love their children more than they hate our children. So when my love to my child is at least as powerful as my hate to your child, there's hope. But when my hate to your child is more intense than my love for my child, so I'm ready to have my children suffer and perish Just I could take down a few of your children. It's hard for Jews to understand this. It's hard for people to understand this. So in a crazy world, what do? They say this can't be. So it must be Israel is so evil. Because it can't be. Nobody wants their children to die because they hate other people's children. Even if I don't like your kids. But I like my kids more. So do something for your own kids. Forget about anything else. For your own kids. Your own kids are going to die. I hate your guts, mamish. Fine, I hate your guts. But I also love my guts. I hate your guts and I love my guts. So it must be that the Jews are so evil that they are doing all of this. But I'm explaining to you, when you don't understand all these things, how corrupt the mind can go. You become completely meshuggah. And then Jews themselves start questioning themselves because they don't know who they are anymore. That's why you have to remember Amalek every day. Why say Zachas Hashalach Amalek? Because if not, you become crazy. You don't know the boundaries anymore. You don't understand what a Hitler is. You don't understand these people.
Is it possible that Amalek wants just a cover? Because there's really no substance in him, but the only way he can get cover is actually be famous in the news, at least to kill somebody to be famous.
It could be it's a major part of it. He needs that attention, that validation, that existence. The yeshus of Amalek doesn't allow another Metzias to exist. This is a different type of hatred. And the same is true with Gaiva. There's a Gaiva, there's an arrogance, it's completely not al pi seichel. It's not coming because of success. So you could, that's zechayin. That's what he says, it's chutzpah b'li tam. The worst thing you can do in these situations is try to negotiate. Try to be rational. What that does is, it only proves to your enemy how weak you are, how stupid you are, how vulnerable you are, how frail you are. Because the whole basis of the gaiva doesn't have to do with seichel. So it didn't come in that way, it's not going to come out that way, and by doing that, you're simply ceding precious territory of your mental space to this gaiva, and it's not going to succeed. And the same is true within every person. And he says that's what happened with Amalek. There was a hot bath, everyone was in awe, and he came to fight. There was a chutzpah and gaiva belita. In a person's life, we have this also. Sometimes we have such blockages. With seichel, I'm not going to win. And he says, here the avodah can't just be with nefesh, ruach, neshama. Here you need chaya and here you need yichida. Only chaya and especially yichida can fight Amalek. Why? Nefesh, ruach, neshama are koiches pnimim. Any koyach pnimi is always limited. What's pnimi? Pnimi means it's integrated into a system. If it's integrated into a system, it has a measurement, it has limits. That's how it is. Nefesh, ruach, neshama are related to certain organs. They function in a certain model and certain structure, and that's their blessing. But because it's koiches pnimim, they can affect the parts of the nefesh habahamis that is also integrated and has a measure, has a limit, has a structure. But those parts of the nefesh habahamis that have no hakbalas, if you come with hakbalas of kedusha, you're not going to be able to touch that. You have to come with the part of holiness that's infinite, that's unlimited. The parts of the nefesh habahamis that live in hakbala, they're limited, they have a structure. So the structure of kedusha can work with them and transform them. But the parts of the nefesh habahamis that have no hakbala, there's an insanity there. It's a complete insanity. You might call it active trauma 24/7. If you come with the part of your elikus that's b'hakbala, you're not going to win. You're not on the same frequency. There's a power here that is much deeper than you. Amalek has a sense of infinity. With cheshbonis, you'll come, let's sit down by a table, I'll explain to you the benefit. I don't care about your explanations. Which part of you can win? Only Yechidah Shebenefesh. Now you need Yechidah Shebenefesh. He never has no Hagbola. It's Ein Sof. Be'emes Ein Sof. Somehow Amalek understands that. Amalek gets it. He knows that's the threat. That's the threat. Mitzad Yechidah Shebenefesh, you could be Mevatel Amalek. Without that, you can't be Mevatel Amalek. This is called the koiches makifim of the nefesh elikis. Not koiches pnim, but koiches makifim. Makifim means not it's around you physically. It's above being limited in a certain keli. That's why it's called makif, right? Pnimi means it's limited by a certain keli, because it's manifested through the keli. Nefesh, ruach, neshama. Chaya is beyond, and then yichid even deeper. That's the main nekuda we explored. Yeah. Yeah. Yichida, yeah. He needs a different inyan. He needs yichida. That's what he says. The koiches pnimim are kshurim im havana v'asaga, so it's b'medida v'hagbala. Medida means a measurement from the word medid, madud. It's measured, and mugbal means it's limited. It's holy. It's divine. We're talking about the nefesh elikis. We're talking about godliness, but it's b'medida v'hagbala. So it can affect those things that are connected to medida v'hagbala. The parts of the nefesh habahamis, and there's a lot of that that's connected to medida v'hagbala, you can affect it. And that's what we learned before, how you talk to it and you explain it. You have to get the nefesh habahamis into the prefrontal cortex, and then you can explain, you could communicate. And that's very powerful. But the inyan she'ein by hagbalas v'taimim, something that has no hagbalas and no taimim, if you're going to come with the power of Hakbala, you have no access to it. It's much more intense, it's much more powerful. So it's not like chas v'shalom, you give up. No, now you have to tune in to your own koiches makifim, to the part that's completely l'mayla min haseichel. Not l'mata min haseichel, it's l'mayla min haseichel. How do you know the difference? If you're threatened by seichel, I told you, how do you know if something is higher than seichel or lower than seichel? If it's lower than seichel, you're threatened by seichel. That's what we call a cult. Why? Because you may hear something that's going to challenge you. When you're l'mayla min haseichel, you're not threatened by seichel. You're not threatened by it. You just know its limits. You appreciate its limits. You know till where it can go. And afterwards, it could bring you to certain places, but afterwards it simply has no, it can't take you to certain places. You need a different fuse. You need a different vibration. You need to tune into a different frequency in the soul. It's a different frequency. It's a frequency l'mayla ma'hagbala. Was fragst du? What do you ask? Oh, there's no mashal for it. Yechida, the mashal and the nimshal are the same. In Yechida, there's no mashal. Yechida, the mashal and the nimshal are the same. That's Yechida, huh? Including the Hamas inside. There's also the Hamas inside of a person. You're right. You're right. We can hallucinate about everything. You're right. You're right. That's true. We can hallucinate about everything. But when I hallucinate, ultimately I'm going to wake up from the hallucination. You wake up from the dream. You understand what I'm saying? That's how I know I'm hallucinating. I'm going to wake up from it. And if I never wake up from it, no, ma toiv ma noyim. So it's a chalom and gesundheit. But if I'm taka hallucinating, I'm going to wake up. When I'm not hallucinating, you don't wake up from it. Why? Because you weren't hallucinating. It was real. So if it's coming from a place of hallucination, I'm chapping madreges and chapping malachim, I also wake up from it. And then it's very painful. So either I go into a deeper hallucination, or I become very broken and cynical. Or the third thing is, I start learning chassidus be'emes, and I'm working on myself. That's the third option. They say about the Psimcha Binim of Pshischa, the Psimcha Binim once gave a mashal. So he said that there was once a Yid, he bought himself a gewaldige horse. It was like, top of the line. The Tesla of horses. Top. Expensive and healthy and handsome and beautiful and fast and powerful. Amazing horse. Loyal, dedicated. They're called the horse of the Cossacks horses. And He was afraid somebody's going to steal it. So he hired a shomer, he hired a guard to stay there all night by the corral, by the stable, to watch the horse. So shomer sachar, a real shomer. And the Jew goes to sleep, but he can't fall asleep. Because he's afraid what happens if the shomer falls asleep and somebody steals the horse. So every few minutes he gets out of bed, gets dressed, and goes outside to see if the guy is still up. So the Simcha Binim says, this fellow wakes up 1 in the morning, he goes outside, Baruch Hashem, the shomer is there, he's up. His horse is there. He says, how is it going? He says, fine. He says, are you going to fall asleep? He says, no, I'm hired to watch. So he says, what do you do when you get tired? He says, I'm thinking about things to entertain me so I don't get tired. He says, what are you thinking about? So I'm thinking about a bagel has a hole in the middle, right? My question is, when you eat the bagel, what happens to the hole? Where did the hole disappear? That's what I'm busy with. He says, oh, that's good. Continue thinking about that question. Goes back. Can't fall asleep. So now a lady comes back out. He says, you're still up? I'm still up. He says, how do you keep yourself? I'm thinking about interesting things. What are you thinking about? He says, I'm thinking about people who have long beards. When they go to sleep, do they put the beard on top of the blanket or under the blanket? Right? And it's a very interesting question. What do they do? How do they do with it? He says, oh, very, very good. Continue. And that's how the night went. Anyway, at some point, he comes out, takes a look, and the horse is not there. The Ganav came. Asher Yagurti Bo, what he was afraid of happened. So he goes over to the guy and he says, what's going on? He says, I'm thinking. He says, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about the fact I'm here and I'm thinking about all of these interesting things. How did the horse disappear? That's what I'm thinking about. So Simcha Binim said that's true about a lot of people. They're busy thinking and thinking and thinking, and the horse disappeared. So I'll call upon him. When you're talking about Yechidah Shebenefesh, it's the union of Lamayla Mehagbala. Because it's Lamayla Mehagbala, so therefore over there's no Menagid. And even the Menagid of Amalek dissipates. That's what he's going to continue. Du verstehst? Ein bisschen? There's no opposition. Like he said in the end, he said before beautifully, in this Pchinna, there's no other Metzias that you have to be Mavatal, because there's no Metzias outside of Atzmos and Hussein Seif.
So you can't really get there so easily, so often.
We're always there. Yechidah is always there. Yechidah is the reality. When there's no blockages, Yechidah is not a level. Yechidah is reality. When there's no blockages, we're in reality. That's it. You understand? Everything else is based on a filter, on a cover-up, on a blockage. So the question is which frequency I'm tuning into. Yeah. It's a completely different. It's a different Indian. When you're there, you know it. But everyone is there. You're be'etzim there. In Chassidus, Mashiach is called Mashiach. It's the Yechidah HaKlalis. That's the name in Chassidus. In the Maamar, Mashiach is called Yechidah HaKlalis, the collective Yechidah of Klal Yisrael. That's a definition. Yechidah HaKlalis. What's Yechidah HaKlalis? There's Yechidah HaPratis. The Moirei Nayim writes, Rabbi says everyone has a nitzutz of Mashiach, a spark of Mashiach. When everyone reveals their nitzutz, all the nitzutzes together creates the collective Mashiach. Now, the collective Mashiach is not a person comes down on a donkey, says, yeah, I'm here to redeem you. You could continue eating sushi and I'll liberate you. Yechidah HaKlalis of Mashiach is really the accumulation of all the individual Yechidahs, creating a large collective consciousness called Yechidah. But the Mashiach is the one who embodies it, so to speak, and therefore can inspire it, can arouse it, can help people achieve it. But that's the Nakuda. And that's the Chiddush of number 5. That's what we spoke about Ne'ilah. We spoke about the 5th son on Pesach, the 5th cup, Kais Chamishi, Kais Shel Eliyahu. This is the fifth, which is beyond Atzilus. Nefesh Ruach Neshama Chai Yechida. It's number 5, quintessence. HaChamishis L'Para. It says in Zohar, Chamishis, Yosef said the 5th should go to Para. The Mineis, Pediyon, Vizgalion, Kol Nohain. And Para comes the word openness. All the lights are revealed. There's Pare down here, but Pare in the Shaidish, Priya, in circumcision, something called Priya. It's completely open. Right? You even remove the last Arla, the second foreskin, that's called, there's Mila and there's Priya. There's 2 levels of a bris. You notice Shabbos by the bris. There's Mila and you stayed close? You weren't looking, okay. You were the Sandik? No. Sandik moment. Who was the Sandik? So he made a bris for an enical, Mazel Tov.
So maybe why that's the Torah says Chumashim Mitzvah Mitzrayim, maybe that's the...
Chamushim alo. Chamushim is Chamishi, yeah. Chamish is Lapara. It's the B'chinas HaYechida.
Maybe that's not like a 1/5 slab, but
Yeah.
That's the Yechida.
Yeah. 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 An interesting thing, the Alter Rebbe had a minhag, all the Chabad Rebbeim had a minhag, at the end of the Seder, they themselves would pour back the 5th cup, the Kais Shalel, back into the bottle of wine. And it was a whole Seder Avodah. The Rebbe, when he would do a Seder when his father-in-law's house, when his mother-in-law was alive, he would do a Seder with them publicly. Later he did private only with his Rebbetzin. So at the end of the Seder, he would take the 5th cup and put it back into the bottles with a funnel, and they would sing Keiliata, Keiliata. And it was a whole Avodah. It took a long time. What was just you taking the cup, you don't want to waste the wine, so you put it back in the bottom, so Bal Tashchas. And then once at a Fabrengen, it was Shabbos Hagadol, Tavshemem Tes 89, the Rebbe said a word. He said that the 4 cups, says in Arizal, the 4 cups are connected Arba Oilamas. Atzilus Bri Yitzid Asiya, you go upwards. Asiya Yitzid. And that's also the 4 questions. The Manishtana, the 4 Shailas, is also connected to 4 Oilamas. And the 4 sons, you have the Chacham on one side, the Rosh is the other one. Atzilus and Asiya you always keep together. You need the 2 together. And then in the middle you have Tam and Sheni Yedei Elishul. So it's the 4 sons. And that's why so many inyanim of Pesach are connected to number 4. And then the 5th cup, which we don't drink yet, is the Kais Chamishi, is the B'china of Yechida, which is connected to the Gula Hasidah, the future Gula. He said, that's Yechida. That's Kais Chamish, the 5th cup. He says, but the real Avodah is to take Yechida and put it back into the Kalim. Bring it back into the Kalim. He said, and that's why the Nesiim, the Rabbeim, they used to pour the cup back into the bottle after the Seder, because to bring the Chida back into the Keli from where it was taken, that's the biggest Chiddush. Right? Then I understood the whole Inyan. In other words, when there's moments Yechidush B'Nefesh gets revealed. You see, even after October 7th in Eretz Yisrael, by a lot of Jews, some Nekuda of Yechida. When Yechidush B'Nefesh gets revealed, it's not like you have questions, but you have answers. That's not the Vart. You're not in the frequency of questions and answers. So a soldier that volunteers to go into Gaza, he has a wife, he has children. He has a future. He's not being forced. There were 200,000 people who volunteered. They were all around the world to go back. After the 6-day war, the Rebbe said a word. He said that as a soldat is gestanden in El Arish in Egypt, mit a Bix, it is given Gilui Elikus Lamata. It was a revelation of Elikus Lamata. Why? Because the consciousness of that soldier was Kulei Mesidus Nefesh. Kulei Mesidus Nefesh. It was Yechidush B'Nefesh. There was no self, because I have a country and the country needs me to serve and this, so therefore it's not the word. Yeah, you have some. There's an akud that comes out that this is the only reality and I'm embracing it enthusiastically, even though al pi seichel, a normal person will say, let's talk about it, let's think about it, let's reflect on it. When that self comes out, you know who you are, you know who you're not, and it's deeper than any other emotion in the world, because this is a nekuda of achdus, where you're one with Atzmos Ein Sof, and it's even beyond physical life. You're going to tell me it doesn't make sense. You're right, it doesn't. You're right. You're right. Atzmos also doesn't make sense. Seichel is created. Yechida goes higher than creation. It's the nekuda of the boire. Yeah, v'hikin nagan amanagan. Yeah. And there's moments of life that the Chiddush HaBenefesh is nisayder. And you're not being mevatel something, you're not fighting with your Nefesh HaBahamas, you're not fighting with addictions, you're not fighting with your Yetzer Hara. There's no Yetzer Hara there. There's no Yetzer Hara. Does God have a Yetzer Hara? The same Yetzer Hara that God has, your Chiddush HaBenefesh has. Hashem have a Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is also part of your Chiddush HaBenefesh. But that's not yet Geula. The question is, can Yechida go back into Kalim? That's already a whole other inyan. When I'm going to work, I'm operating with Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Daily life is not a war zone, hopefully. I mean, in Israel, it's not simple. But daily life, we live in structure, and we have to live in structure. You have a schedule. You're not in a war zone. There's relationships, there's ups, there's downs, there's stupid things you got to take care of, like a flat tire. I mean, it's not so stupid, but you just got to take care of it. You got to go to a dentist because you have a root canal. Right? Your kid has an earache, the principal wants to, whatever it is. Kol chad from shura delay. Big things, small things, serious things, not serious things. Shtusam, nishkin shtusam. Shvig is upset at you, you were supposed to make the Sheva brachas. You can't make the Sheva brachas. You ask somebody else to make the Sheva brachas. Ekvelt, you're destroying the family. La'adul netzach netzachim. The chiddush is yichidush benefesh to be in kalim. That's the nekuda. That nekuda, that level of pnimiyus hanefesh should permeate the nefesh ruach neshama chaya, because that's really the etzem of everything. So that's the idea of taking the fifth cup, putting it into. Now, in a person's life, let's see what this means. What does this mean in a person's life? One nikud in a person's life is just say one word that it's reflected in a lot of people's lives. It could be. What does Amalek mean inside of us? What does it mean my hatred is irrational? I don't think I have irrational hatred. What does it mean your arrogance is irrational? I don't know so many people, at least in this room, that have irrational hatred or irrational arrogance. Am I wrong? Huh? Rabbi Isaac, am I wrong? Is there anybody in this room that has irrational arrogance, irrational hatred? You're not Amalekim, Baruch Hashem. But there's Amalek inside. What's Amalek inside? Amalek inside could be very, very subtle. Doesn't scream Amalek. And it's not necessarily bloodthirsty. But Amalek is that there is an element of self-destruction that's not al pi seichel. It didn't come in with seichel, it's not going to go out with seichel. You have sometimes people, it's true about all of us, we all develop coping mechanisms in life, all of us. And those coping mechanisms don't come because people are choosing to do evil. B'chlal not. The coping mechanisms develop because of our experiences and how our brain, our amygdala, we spoke in previous shurim, how our brain responds to different situations, and we develop patterns and we develop coping mechanisms, and those become the operating systems through which we operate. Sometimes those coping mechanisms become so debilitating to the point where the person is living in what we call today active trauma, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not even conscious of it. If I'm conscious of my coping mechanisms, it's already the path to liberation. If I could say, these are my blinds, these are my coping mechanisms, this is what happens, So then I already have some awareness of it. The moment I have awareness of it, it's not in full control of me. When it's so deep that I don't even have awareness of it, in other words, it controls my awareness too. So anything I'm thinking about is filtered through that lens of active trauma. So even my ideas about it come through that. In other words, it's the full balabas over my life because it's not conscious. So it's completely in control of me because any I that I'm processing, it first gets permission from my trauma before I can process it. This is where the gullus is so deep that I don't even know I'm in gullus. Like the Baal Shem Tov said, "V'anoichi haster aster." What's haster aster? The hester gufa is bahastara. The concealment is concealed. If darkness is called darkness, it's not so dark. It's dark, but it's called darkness. It has a label, like the story with Reb Nachman of Breslov, right? We're going to eat the wheat, and we're going to become a sugar, but we're going to put a sign on the forehead, Ich bin Meshuga. So at least when you look at me, you'll be able to say, Rabbi, why there's a sign on you, Ich bin Meshuga, so just you should know B'stam Meshugana. Okay, Baruch Hashem. There's context. There's context for insanity. But when the insanity is everywhere, it's not just on the forehead. So now insanity is normalcy. What happens so often, you constantly see it. What happens so often is that the forces have become ingrained so deep that my coping mechanism is the only reality I know, and I can prove it and I can explain it because it's so deeply ingrained. And if you come to me and you try arguing against it, I can't even register it, and I'll prove you wrong because I'm not coming from a seicheldika place. I'm coming literally from a survival. Somehow somebody who's challenging these patterns wants to kill me, at least in my own mind, even if really they love me. But I'm not capable of hearing that. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? If you don't know what I'm talking about, it doesn't mean you're not dealing with it. It just means you don't know what I'm talking about. It means maybe you're dealing with it more than those who know what I'm talking about. Because those who know what I'm talking about, you know what you're dealing with. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it doesn't mean you're not dealing with it. It just means it's so deep that you don't even know what I'm talking about because you can't afford, at the moment, the system can't afford to say you know what I'm talking about. Because not me. The most powerful form of Amalek is it doesn't call itself Amalek, it calls itself normal. It even calls himself loving. If you'll ask Hamas if they're good people, they say, of course we're good people. We want love in the world. We want God's love in the world. If you ask Hitler, are you a good person? Me? I want a beautiful planet. If you would ask Stalin, are you a good person? Of course. I'm the one fighting for justice. I don't know if there's a murderer in the world who calls himself a Ritzeach, a monster, a gangster. He calls himself the Tzaddik Hador. I just have a different version of what a tzaddik looks like. I kill 50 million people. I gas them, I mutilate, I torture, I behead. That's my version of tzidkus. But I'm a servant of truth. Not to compare, chas v'sholom, to compare. But everything exists in microcosm in a very subtle way. The Amalek inside of us doesn't call itself Amalek. If he calls himself Amalek, it's Shana Halbetzada. It's already good. He calls himself Amalek. He doesn't call himself Amalek. He calls himself goodness, normalcy. And the truth is, I developed that because these patterns somehow allowed me to survive. And if it's so deep, it's not even conscious. So then it's completely took over the entire operating system and all my seichel, and all my midas, and all my avodas Hashem, and learning all the mussar and machshavich, whatever you're learning, it's all through that filter. In other words, Amalek is the one who has to give a haskama on any shir that I hear. Amalek, I have to go to Amalek and say, you agree? If Amalek agrees, I take it. If Amalek doesn't agree, you say, he's an idiot. Or today was apicursus. Or this is not according to my Messiah. Baruch Hashem. Or even worse, that's Nachmel, at least there's opposition. Or even worse, I already knew it. Yeah, I'm already working on it for years. Or, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But the bottom line is, when it comes to the actual behavior and the actual trigger, it's not affected. The worst thing a person could think that they're going to do is they're going to talk themselves out of this system. Because it never went in through words, it's not going to go out through words. It didn't go in through seichel, it's not going out through seichel. Nobody persuaded you to be this way, nobody's going to persuade you not to be this way. This is operating in a very, very deep place. It's called primal. It's called pre-verbal. In other words, it's koiches makifim shebenefesh. It's a different level of the nefesh habahamas. Here I must go to my own chaya yechida. Your chaya, especially your yechida, can't be traumatized. Why? What's Yechidah Shebenefesh? Yechidah Shebenefesh is the nekuda in the soul that's one with Atzmos. So anything that you experience with Yechidah is always from a place of infinity. So it's Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi. What's the whole union of Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi that we always talk about? That Hashem is present everywhere and yet He's not changed. How can that be? So you're not present. If I'm present, I'm changed. The Chiddush of Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi is that I could be Lamata Adein Tachlis. Present fully embodied. But every nekuda over there is experienced and is part of the Ein Sof. We're processing it differently, that's true, because we have limited tools to process reality. Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi means no outer reality changes me because every reality is experienced within from Ein Sof. Yechidah Shebenefesh is the pchin of Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi. So Yechidah Shebenefesh could be fully embodied, fully present, go through any experience you went through, but in Yechidah Shebenefesh, the way it's experienced is from a place of Atzmos Ein Sof. Now when infinite consciousness, having a finite experience, in Rabbi Yaakov's famous t-shirt that we're still waiting for, when infinite consciousness, your wife's t-shirt, when infinite consciousness is having a finite experience, it's not finite, it's infinite consciousness going through it. That's what we learned in the Maamar Bas Lagani about Yosef. What was Yosef's kayach? Yosef's power, he wasn't detached from the world. He went through things that are insanity. And that's what the Shvatim couldn't understand. How can Yosef remain in Dveikus when you go into such lowly places? The answer is, Taka mitzad Yechidah Shebenefesh, without Yechidah Shebenefesh you can't. Mitzad Yechidah Shebenefesh, Yosef could fully go into those places. Be affected by them. What do I mean be affected by them? Be in a relationship with them. That's what I mean, in fact, being in a relationship with them. He had to run the country. He couldn't be up there. He wasn't in the stars. He wasn't living in a higher reality. Yosef had to run the economy. So he had to be fully connected to the reality. But because Yosef was anchored in the pchin of Ein Sof, Lamata Adein Tachlis, so Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi, so therefore fully present in that place, he goes through everything. But the way Yechidah experiences it is it's an experience from Atzmos Ein Sof. It's an experience of Ein Sof. So therefore, there's nothing outside of Ein Sof here. And from there comes all the healing in the world. Because it's not that you went through all these things, but there's a way out. In that space, you watched it all happen, you experienced it all happen, but your infinity was not tarnished a bit. On the contrary, this too was part of your Ein Sof. And therefore, this actually just allows your infinity to shine much more, because your infinity could shine even through darkness. Did you hear what I said? This allows your infinity to shine much more, because now your Yechidah Shebenefesh shines through darkness, where other people's Yechidah may not shine through darkness. Now, it's much easier to give a shiur about this than to experience this. Because as I told you many times, the dark forces inside of us don't come to the shiur. They come, but they're doing their own thing. They're planning the next attack. So in the shiur, it's nice. You could sit and smile and even have a seirus. But when it happens, it's like you could take the shiur and throw it into the Hudson River. No Yechidah, no Nefesh, no Ruach, Neshama, no Amalek. It's called miserable. It's called darkness. It's called toxicity. I got it. And that's why if you hallucinate, it becomes a disaster. But if you don't hallucinate, this is where the avoid is. The avoid is, I have to deal with Nefesh and Ruach and Neshama. And Yechidah is not something that you do to bypass other parts. A person does avoid with all the parts, because that's where we have to live. That's part of Dira B'Tachtainim. As we saw, Atzmus wants to go through the whole Seder Ishtalshalos. You have to go through the Seder Ishtalshalos. But Yechidah Shebenefesh means, when I work through Seder Ishtalshalos, the point is to get to the point that's beyond Ishtalshalos. And beyond Ishtalshalos, there's only oneness. It's Atzmus Ein Sof. And over there, it's not that you're sick and you became healthy. You were never sick. You couldn't be sick. That's why when Yechidah HaKlalos, when Mashiach gets revealed in the world, it's not just Golus is over. Golus is transformed. You understand the difference? When Jews are going to look back when Mashiach comes at Golus, they're not going to say, wow, that was real Gehenim, but it's worth it for free tuition, free mortgages, nice real estate, no shidduch crisis, no illnesses, no social pressure. And tuition won't be killing everybody. Okay, that's not the Vart of Mashiach. The Vart of Mashiach is that they're going to look back and say, and that's why we don't understand what Mashiach. When we talk about Mashiach, we're projecting Golus onto Mashiach. You understand? We talk about Mashiach, there'll be free food. You'll have an endless smorgasbord when you come home for dinner. You won't have to wait for your wife to cook dinner or go order out. Every kid that needs a shidduch will be a shidduch, and there'll be mental health and physical health, which I'm not minimizing it. I'm not minimizing these blessings, God forbid. But we're projecting our Golus understanding of blessing onto Mashiach. What we have now in good days, we'll have constantly. Okay, Gewaldig, that's not Mashiach. That's a little tiny fragment of it. I'll tell you why. That Mashiach doesn't justify a Holocaust. That Mashiach doesn't justify 2,000 years of atrocities. Doesn't, sorry. Forget about a Holocaust. Doesn't even justify the innocent torture of one child. Doesn't justify. Why does the Navi say, V'haya b'yayim hahu? That day they're going to say, Oitcha Hashem ki anaftabi. Thank you. Somehow Golus will be transformed. Golus, Goyle and Geula is the same word. Geula is an aleph. You put the aleph into Goyle, you have Geula. In other words, Geula is not different than Goyle. Geula is revealing the aleph, the oneness, the Yechidah, Yachid is one, in Goyle. Yechidah HaKlalos redefines your whole experience of life. Is it possible for you to be able to embrace every part of your life and start dancing? That's the Nekud of Yechidah. Not despite what happened. I'm strong, I'm resilient, I became stubborn. That's not Yechidah. I didn't become stubborn. Yosef never became stubborn. That's what when we learned about the Baal Shem Tov, that he davened tefillos, and he only was succeeded at the end of his life. That Friday night, he should still be able to answer people's questions. Yeah, we learned in the Maamar of Basi Lagani, Tavshin Chaf, which is Chav Dalet. What's Pshat? To answer people's questions, you have to relate to them. I can't tell them, in Gan Eden you'll see the answer. Somebody comes to me and is struggling, I'll say, in Gan Eden you'll find out the answer. That's not an answer, sorry. It's true, Gan Eden you'll find out. Or say, everything is good, it's perfect. Everything is good. Yeah, my life is falling apart, it's all good. That's not an answer. The Baal Shem Tov could have said that. That's not an answer. The Baal Shem Tov asked that he should be able to answer the person. In other words, you have to relate to his predicament, to his challenge. But Friday night was Aliyah Sa'olamis, Aliyah Sanashama. That connection can only happen mitzad Yechidah. Because mitzad Yechidah, you could be fully present in every place. The Yechidah doesn't need bittul. Bittul means you have to disengage from the ego, but in Yechidah there's l'chatchila no ego to disengage from. So mainly you don't need bittul. Amalek doesn't exist when there's Yechidah.
How do you define Amalek?
I'm defining Amalek in our life when we're living with forces that are not rational. And through sitting rational, that's why talk therapy could be very, very limiting. What's talk therapy? Even though for decades it was the Yisoida, Vamuda Chachmas, and the remedy for everything. From another Jew, Dr. Freud, Meret. Things that came in through words can go out through words. Things that didn't come in through words, Amalek's gaive, chutzpah, sin, meshagasen, self-destructive qualities didn't come in through words, it didn't come in through seichel.
So how did it come into?
How did it come in?
Where
Because you're thinking about Hamas.
I'm talking about myself.
Oh,
So I'm just
right. Of course, I can't relate it and you can't relate it because the you that we know of is part of it.
so how do you
Right. So that's the predicament. The I that's trying to figure it out is the I that has been defined by these coping mechanisms. It's like when you take the Ganav and you make him the Shomer. You imagine you take the thief and you say you're going to protect the treasure. The problem is this guy is the one who you're protecting from. We take our mind, which has been affected by trauma, and we use our minds to tell us how to heal. The mind is the one that needs the healing. We take the words and ideas and we say, you're going to be responsible for my healing. They're the ones, I'm protecting the treasure from this Ganav. They're the ones that need the healing. What doesn't make sense?
I can't relate to it, so that's why it doesn't make sense.
The Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi is Yechidish Benefesh, so it's indestructible. It says in Zohar, the first two Batei Mikdash were built by people. What people build is mortal. It has an end. Binyan Hashlishi is Binyana de Kutchebrichu. That's what it says in Zohar. It's Hashem's building. So it's nitzchi. What does that mean? It means as long as I'm holding on to a human structure, I'm holding on to something temporary. When our structure is a human structure, I build myself up and I'm a powerful person. I built myself up. I'm also going to have a Churban Beis HaMikdash. When you surrender the need for having a human structure and you allow it to be a divine structure, it's eternal. But for that we need the death of ego. As long as my ego is building my Beis HaMikdash, it's going to have a Churban. It must happen. Because it lechatchila doesn't have a real eternal existence. It says this in Zohar. The third Beis HaMikdash is Binyana de Kutcher Baruch. What does that mean in a person's life? It means what's building up my life is not me. What's building up my life is that I gave up the need for me to build. I'm a channel. Once you're a channel, you're indestructible. The Rebbe once said it told me, Bittul is the einzige Sach, was kann ich bottle werden. Bittul kann ich bottle werden. Everything else can werden bottle. Bittul can be bottle. How you mevatel bittul? Tell me, what do? You mevatel it. Bittul says, good. More. Yeshus, you can be mevatel. Bittul, you can't be mevatel. How you mevatel bittul? You kill it. Good. That's what it's asking. How you mevatel bittul? Last time you were having Klois HaNefesh, today is the opposite.
I'm trying to find Amalek within the
You don't have Amalek. Okay, is the machbasa.
can't relate.
A coping mechanism, you mean like, let's say, I'm going to talk about drugs, but let's say anger. That's a coping mechanism?
All midas rayos have a coping mechanism. Sometimes the coping mechanism is developed in a way, right, that it came in, it can go out. There's explanations, right? And it's important. It's important to do that. Sometimes there's levels of blockages that are so deep. Fears that are so deep, we're not even ready to acknowledge that they exist. Trust me when I tell you, we have many people that are in active trauma 24/7, completely unconscious. They're functional people. They make money. They're successful. They're honorable in their community. They're dignified people. They're actually good people too. They're intelligent people. They're resourceful people. Some of them are brilliant people. Some of them are very charismatic people. I could add another few adjectives if you want, but trust me. What do I mean?
I actually have an example of Amalek within, but I'm afraid to speak about it.
You're afraid to speak about it.
Yeah. Well, maybe I should too.
Go ahead.
My peers. Can I?
Sure.
I have a suffix about my personal death to the point that I sometimes feel that I'm in dread, die, and I have a suffix that the death is not true, and I will wake up and I will be tachrichim and I would not be able even to move and stuff like that. I have that deep fear, and I I think it's beyond even trauma or rationale. Maybe I was buried alive in the previous lives or whatever it is, maybe. But that's the suffix I have, which tortures me constantly.
So you viscerally imagine that.
I not
That you're
only
gonna-
viscerally imagine, I even have my dreams about even my mother, that she comes back and she said, "Why did you bury me? I was alive."
Wow.
Most people's the other way around. They're scared to die.
No, he's scared that he's going to die. They're going to bury him, but he's not going to be dead. He's going to be alive, buried alive.
Yeah, I'm afraid to be buried. So I have a suffix about the death, that the death is not a real death. And so I have
And this is a constant experience.
It's a constant torture for me. Is it like a suffix? Because I feel it's maybe that's my Amalek, because Amalek is related to suffix.
Amalek is the gematria suffix.
Yes.
Amalek is the gematria suffix.
So maybe that's
The word,
same as even about
the
suffix.
deepest self-doubt comes from Amalek. The deepest self-doubt.
So is it the Amalek was in me?
You have to answer that question. I can't
I have
answer
no
that
idea.
question.
It tortures me, but it's
Your Yechidah Benefesh has to answer that question.
no tools for it. I have a mushroom.
What do you say, mushrooms? Oh, you're saying he should have mushrooms. Okay. Maybe you need unique tools for this, not the regular tools. Okay. We have some people with different resources here in this room, so you'll talk to the Bavram and give different suggestions. There's suggestions for this.
But is this,
You're not stuck.
Is this,
So I think you're touching on something very important, and that is, you have a very you're aware of this, yeah. Many of us have a lot of these types of things, but we're not conscious of them. But they're always there. It's like a operating system of the computer at the back end. It's always there. It's always functioning, and it's governing all my thoughts, or at least many of my thoughts. My instincts, my feelings, my words, my behaviors, my attitudes, my reactions, my emotions. And now, I'm learning a sefer and I'm saying, okay, so this is the pshat, einoid mulvadoi. So b'meila, this is how I should feel. But I don't realize my feelings were hijacked already by this back-end operating system that's telling me exactly how to react, how to feel, what to do. And it's a sinister monster deep, deep, deep inside. And that monster is already absolute. He's absolute. He runs the whole show. And only the emotions that he allows will I be able to experience. Because it all has to go through his filter. Or it all has to go through his lens. And it wreaks havoc. And for one person, it's crazy anxiety. Or it's crazy fear, or guilt, or shame, or insecurity, or social anxiety, religious anxiety. Of course, depression and despondency and all types of cravings and yearnings, or fight and flight and fawn and freeze and disassociation and whatever. There's like a billion manifestations. Amalek is one word, but he comes in, 7 billion forms.
Isn't that something it's something that came into us from outside?
It could be a combination of 1,000 things. But very often, a very common thing is, as we're growing up and we develop, right? My nefesh habahamis, in order to survive, right? Especially if it faced dysfunction, and who didn't face dysfunction, but some of us more than others, it develops certain voices, patterns, ways of responding to the world that will safeguard its existence, and you can't blame it. At its core, you can't blame it. It's a survival mechanism. And actually, in some ways, you have to be thankful to it, because it kept me alive. Your nefesh habahamis may have decided at 4 years old, right, that for you to be afraid of death every moment will be the healthiest thing for you. Your nefesh habahamis may have decided at 6 years old that for you to be afraid that you'll be buried alive or tortured is the best thing for you. Plus, there may be, as he said, a past life thing. There were people who were buried alive, and if the neshama come, I don't know, I'm not an expert on all the possibilities, but there could be also, there's things of past life, there's epigenetics, there's trauma from previous generations. It's not one thing. We don't always know the full answer for it.
Actually, in my case, it happened in the previous generation as well. My father was buried alive.
Your father was buried alive.
My father was buried alive during World War II when the bomb came and put all the earth and buried him alive. And his brother noticed the shoe and he pulled him out. But he would not be able to come out himself. He could not move. There was so much.
This is which year?
Huh?
Which year was your father buried alive?
1941.
Wow. How old was he?
He was 16.
1941, he was 16, and his brother schlepped him out from under the earth, and he survived.
And he survived.
Wow. Wow. Huh? Here you are. Wow.
Now I'm gonna have. Now I'm gonna have. What? So thank you. Now I'm gonna have. You don't have to. He's afraid he's gonna start having these nice things.
No.
It's different. It'll be different. It'll be
It's
different. Yeah.
We know that Amalek is essential for our existence.
One second. My Nefesh Abamas may have decided at 5 years old, yeah, that for me to have an opinion is the worst thing for my survival. Really, really. And this person, 50 years later, doesn't have opinions.
Or the other way around. He always has to have.
Or always have an opinion. If I don't have an opinion for a second, I'm done. The Nefesh Abamas may have decided that if I am not constantly doubting myself, or constantly being afraid of people, I'm committing suicide. And therefore, I'm always afraid of people. Even meeting somebody in the street, 3 seconds, Shalom Aleichem. They just say, how are you? What's up? And in my mind, I thought about it 20 minutes before the meeting. When I saw them from a half a mile away, I was already anxious. And then 20 minutes afterwards, I'm thinking of how stupid I was in the conversation. What is that? Right? None of this is rational. You could sit and I'll explain to you that you shouldn't be like this. Yesh koyach genius. Or you're getting upset, you're disassociating. Let me learn with you Abyssal Musar and tell you about Midas Royas, and I'll tell you what the Gehenna looks like. Shaita, he's in Gehenna already. For 50 years he's in Gehenna. You're going to tell him what Gehenna looks like? They sit with you and say, I'm going to tell you what your Gehenna looks like if you continue to be like this. The guy's in Gehenna already. 50 years in Gehenna. You're not going to describe to him any Gehenna he wasn't in already. This is what happens. He's trying to get out of his Gehenna, so you're telling him more Gehenna. Thank you. You're taking me back to the place I know already. And just the Gehennas we create for ourselves are the real Gehennas. Because the real Gehenna is a Gehenna that's all about healing. The Gehennas we create for ourselves, das is a Gehenna. It's not for healing, it's a real Gehenna. Not Shiva Medura Gehenna, it's Ein Sof Medura Gehenna. So now I'm describing all the beautiful problems. What's my solution for all this? Huh? That's your question, right? Oh, so I don't have a solution for it.
It's essential for the existence.
Of course it's essential for existence. Mitzad Yechidah Shebenefesh, nothing is a mistake. Nothing a mistake. Every experience in life is a journey towards Yechidah. But to process that, I can't jump to Yechidah, because then I can go into denial. You understand? Yechidah Shebenefesh is not denial. Denial is a river in Egypt. And part of people's lives. And we don't want to be in Egypt. Denial is a form of Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim Agvulim. You understood my joke? Okay. Yechidah Shebenefesh is not denial. Yechidah Shebenefesh is the essence of everything. It's not denial. If Yechidah is negating something, it's not Yechidah. If Yechidah is denying reality, it's not Yechidah. It's not oneness. Whenever you deny something, you amputate it. When you amputate something, it means it can't be part of oneness. And Yechidah always has to be part of oneness. That's what Yechidah means. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Yechidah HaKlalos. And that's why Yechidah HaKlalos of Mashiach can't deny Galus. It needs to transform Galus. If it denies Galus, it's not Yechidah. It may be a nice thing to go into a different zone and amputate it. Sometimes we need that. But that's not the ultimate. The ultimate Yechidah is the healing of everything. It's the tikkun. It's the birur of everything.
Because once we reach that state, that you will see that everything in life was a challenge.
Everything in life was an experience of Atzmus Ein Sof, which is phenomenal to have. It's more than even than phenomenal. It's part of the blissful oneness of the person with divinity.
You become happy about the whole thing.
You become happy. To say this prematurely could sound callous, stupid, insensitive, and cruel. It's like, oh, everything is perfect. It's like La La Land. And the same is true with our Nefesh HaBahamas. Nefesh HaBahamas, I'm Yechidish HaBenefesh, I don't have a Nefesh HaBahamas. No, of course I do. And that's why there's Nefesh, and there's Ruach, and there's Neshama, and there's communication, and I have to know which frequency the Nefesh HaBahamas is in. The more we get to know about Yechidish HaBenefesh and tune into it and make it our best friend, the more we learn how Yechidish HaBenefesh can become connected to all the parts of the person, because it's really all the parts of the person. And all the parts are really just there to facilitate the Gilui of Yechidah, the Hisgalus of Yechidah. All the parts are just there to facilitate the Hisgalus of Yechidah.
How do we count this? How do we count this?
That's always the biggest challenge, the tools to get there. The mindset we can have, but the tools to get there. Because Amalek doesn't go down so easily. I told you. Amalek sits by the shear and says, it'll soon be done. Don't worry, your wife is in the middle of texting you. Your son is in the middle of texting you. This is that. And the triggers are there. And thank you, it's very nice to run into Gan Eden. To live reality, yeah. Yeah. So I think the first tool we need is awareness is very important. Awareness. The second tool that we need is to be able to notice things during the day. The more we can notice, they call it pause and breathe. Who just spoke about that? Pause and breathe, right? Rabbi Russell, yeah. Pause and breathe. Pause and breathe means I'm not reacting from the instinctive, familiar place. When you pause and breathe, you can actually watch things coming up, right? Viktor Frankl said between stimuli and response, there's a tiny little space, and in that space, all freedom exists. That space, right? My wife said something, my husband said something, my child said something, my employee, my partner, my friend, my neighbor said something, texted something, I saw something. There's right away, you're this, you're that, I'm this. Pause, breathe. I don't know what I am, I don't know what you are. I don't know. The pause and the breathe gives you, wow. When a person begins to do that, they start noticing things. Another element is noticing your sensations, noticing your emotions, noticing where they exist and breathing into them. These are not things we have been taught as children. Let's just say this. And we haven't been taught this. So it's a lot of new things. We may have not understood it. So we have all these. And
He just said to me, Moshe said something to me so profound.
What, he told you to take mushrooms?
He said, He said,
That's what I heard.
Never be a prisoner to your past. It was a lesson, not a life sentence.
Beautiful. Never be a prisoner to your past. It was a lesson, not a life sentence. Right. Now here's the challenge. The challenge is, it's a great line. He's going to send it out to his WhatsApp list.
No, it's just on me.
Oh, okay, good. The question is, the part of me that's experiencing itself as a prisoner did not decide to experience itself as a prisoner because of words. So the WhatsApp message is good. It's very good. And we send it to people we love, and it's a very good message. And I'll probably steal it for another class. Don't worry, I'll also use it. Hagoynev min Haganav Potter.
I don't know how.
I'm just joking. Yeah, I'm just joking.
I don't have any.
It's fine.
No, it's incredible message.
Yeah, all the way till Hamtaka. When we start noticing emotions, experiencing them, giving them oxygen, this is part of the process of awareness, of self-awareness. and with compassion and with love. Sometimes a person needs another step, and this is a support system to be able to help them go deeper into these patterns. I may not just be able to do it by pause and breathe, or even just having conversations with people. So that's why Hashem has given this generation a lot of different healing methods and opportunities that allow people to be able to break through blockages that have been very, very intense for healing. But also with tremendous sensitivity must be done, with awareness, with sensitivity, with respect. It's not for frivolousness and recreation and fun, chas v'shalom. You know, we're talking about very serious healing modalities that our generation has. And I think every person must find a support system, because everybody needs support to be able to integrate these truths, you know, before and middle and after. And then there's actual avodah, there's real practicing. You could talk and learn, and then there's real bringing it into practice. Pashut bringing it into practice. L'mashal. If somebody I have a relationship with, right, says something, and I find myself triggered very heavily by it, and I disassociate, can I bring that information back into the relationship? For example, can I talk to them about it? And it's not something I ever did, something that happened internal. But can I sit and I say, I need to talk about this? And it's very vulnerable and it's very hard. But I could say, my coping mechanism does this. Do I have permission to share this with you? When we can have a relationship on that level, that's where the greatest healing happens. Take a husband and a wife, for example, right? Nobody triggers each other like a husband and a wife. That's how Hashem made it. 24/7, same house, same marriage. Mamacht eine de andere meshiga. Eze kenegdoi, as the Netziv says, is literal. Eze kenegdoi. Right? So very often they drift, and they say you have to behave nicely, you have to be a mensch. I heard somebody give a lecture about marriage. A little embarrassing. He said, treat your wife like a cheftze shel mitzvah. A cheftze shel mitzvah. Imagine you have a Sefer Torah in the house. You have a Sefer Torah in the house. You have to respect it. You have to be nice to it. You don't scream at the Sefer Torah. You don't throw the Sefer Torah in the house. He meant very well. He meant well. Huh? When she comes into the room, you stand up. If you drop it, you have to fast for I don't know how long. He meant well. What was the nakuda? The nakuda was, right, how much are you going to have a relationship over there? It's a cheftze shel mitzvah. It's a cheftze shel mitzvah. There's no pnimistic connection. Huh? There's something much deeper, right? Your wife is not a cheftze shel mitzvah. She's a gavra. She's not a cheftze. She's a person. She's not an object. Even not a cheftze shel mitzvah. And even a Sefer Torah is nicht a cheftze. It's also there's energy there. There's kedusha. Kedusha is energy. Kedusha is not a cheftze. It's not a subject. It's a relationship. Yeah, there's a famous expression in Gemara, v'chi'oren gavrahu. The Gemara says in Brachas that Rabuna said that Tisha v'arim mitztarfen. 9 people with an Aron Kodesh can make a minyan. So I think Reb Nachman says to him, v'chi'oren gavrahu. So the Aron is a mensch. A minyan, you need people. V'chi'oren gavrahu. So Reb Zusha Vanapol, he once touched to the Pinchas Balafla. He once touched, he says, what Rabuna thought the Aron is a person. He thought this is a person. So the B'zusha said, he said, V'chi'aron gavra, he says, sometimes you have a person who's full of Torah, but he's like an Aron. It's all inside of him, but it's not him. That's what he meant. He said, V'chi'aron gavrahu, you think if you're an Aron, you become a mensch. You can have all the information inside. Sana Mola Safra, all inside of me. A computer, Google, is the biggest baki b'shas. Bavli, Yerushalmi, Sifri, Sifrata, Sefta, yeah. I feel a best of Reb Chaim Kanevsky, if I could say that.
It's like a donkey who carries the books.
Yeah, Tzana Mola Safri. The Gemara says, Chamor Mola Sfarim. Huh? Noises Sfarim. Chamor Noises Sfarim. V'chi Aden Gavru, and Aden is a mensch. How did I get into this? I'm trying to forget. What were we talking about? Oh, you're a cheftze shel mitzvah. Even a Sefer Torah is not just a cheftze. So we trigger each other, right? But if a husband and a wife, I'm giving an example, but it's true with all relationships, could then sit down. And a husband can turn to a wife and say, I want you to know that when you said this at the Shabbos table, or you did this at the Shabbos table, or this happened yesterday with our kids, or with our grandkids, or whatever it is, yeah, the trauma inside of me was triggered from here till China, and I freaked out and I was overwhelmed, and I was fighting for my survival. In my mind, this was like pikuach nefesh. I felt horrific, I felt horrible, I felt like a shmata within a shmata within a shmata. So the wife could turn to the husband and said, yeah, I always knew you're a sick man. You know what happens? He goes back into the trauma for another 25 years. Locks the door again. Locks the door again. Because that just tells him that he was right for being so defensive. I live in a very dangerous world.
Your own wife.
Right. I tried to get married to come out of my loneliness. The marriage is only proving to me how lonely I really am. These are the people who feel much more comfortable in shul than in their house. Because in shul they never have these conversations. In shul you talk about Trump, you talk about Biden, you talk about Netanyahu. It's no problem. You eat a little lekach, some herring, you wait for the next yard site. Right? Nobody's looking at you and saying, what's bothering you? But in the house, we want to come out of our loneliness. But now the loneliness was reinforced. But what if the woman has confidence and self-awareness, so she could look at him and say, wow, I'm sorry, that's hard, that's tough. Thank you for sharing it. Huh? Yeah. And how can I be here for you? She can reassure him. And the other way as well. A woman tells this to him, and instead of him looking at his wife and say, yeah, I always knew you need a psychiatrist. Or, oh, you're just like your mother. You're as crazy as your mother. You're more meshuggah than your mother. Boom, you're done. But if the husband could say, wow, that's tough, that's hard, I'm sorry. But now why can't people do this? Because what happens is your trauma triggers my trauma. So when you're telling me all these things about me, I lose my own confidence. You understand? And that's very, very hard. So now I attack back and you attack back. So it's two people in cages with terrible trauma. They can't look at each other because they're all disconnected. They're trying to survive and they're both innocent. Now what happens if this does happen? Your wife or your husband does respond not in a healing way. Right? So I shared my stuff, and instead of getting a smile or a hug or a gesture, I'm getting another dagger when I already opened up. So now I'm a 4-year-old, I opened up my wound, and instead of getting a caress and say you're safe, what I'm getting is another stab. This is where the challenge is. At this moment, can you say, you know what? I'm fine. I'm fine. My soul is fine. My soul, I'm fine. My wife is having a hard day. My husband is having a hard day. They may not be where I am, but you know what? I need people to be here for my trauma. I also can be here for theirs. The moment I could say, the 4-year-old inside of me wants to go back into Gehenna, right? Amalek will wreak havoc, create a cover-up that will completely disassociate me from me. If at that moment I could remain present and say, that's hard, but there's an adult in the room, it's called me, I got this, my 3-year-old is safe, nobody's destroying you, it's feeling a lot of pain, but I'm now going to go into the place inside of me, which is Ani Hashem Lo Shanisi. That's real Avodas Hashem. That's called Avodas Hashem. Now, you just connected with God. It's very hard because the trauma is screaming. You're being stabbed a second time. You covered your heart at 4 not to have this. You shaita. 50 years I worked with you to protect you. And you went into Gaza and you took off your uniform and you're allowing a terrorist to literally stab you again. You know what? Don't come back to me crying. Don't come back to me. That's exactly the feeling. And it's not with words, it's more powerful. It doesn't use words. Every emotion in your being is saying, don't come back to me, you shaita. I protected you 50 years. You don't want to listen to me? Fine. Loser. Die. I'm not here for you anymore. I don't want to die, so what do? I attack right back. That's the moment that everything, for those of you who have been here for a few years, everything you learned in every Maamar, either it's real or it's fake. How do you know if it's real or fake? That moment. That's the only moment that counts. All other moments, it's fine. We can sitzen, we can verbringen, we can schmooze, and not a big deal. It's nice, it's all good. That's the only moment that counts. When that moment, you don't go back down that rabbit hole. I don't fall into yiush, to efkeris, to complete disassociation. That moment, I actually am present, and I tune into that part. You know what happens? You literally, physically create a new neural path in your brain, so that the next day, it's a little easier. And after doing this 40, 50, 60 times, it's almost, how was I ever different? Why was I ever in Gehenna? I'm supposed to be in Gan Eden. This is called, that's what Avodas Hashem is. People say, what does it mean to serve God? That's what it means to serve God. Serve God means you serve the God inside of you. You don't serve Amalek. You don't serve Gehenna inside of you. You serve God inside of you. You turn to God inside of you and say, Vazak stu Ribono Shalaylam. Am I safe? Hashem says, you're safe. Am I good? You're good. Am I loving? You're very loving. Am I authentic? You're authentic. Is this person the embodiment of evil? No, your trauma needs to say that to protect you. Your wife is not the embodiment of evil. Your wife is a very good person. She has challenges. You also have challenges. Motza minas minai. Trauma finds trauma. I would even tell you that basically the Hashgacha often brings Shidduchim together because his trauma is the one that can heal hers and her trauma can heal his. But sometimes they have to fight for 25 years and kill each other till they figure it out. Because for 25 years it was trauma versus trauma, rather soul versus soul. The moment it's soul versus soul, Yechidah Shebenefesh with Yechidah Shebenefesh, now my trauma will help your trauma will help my trauma. But only if the souls meet each other. The Rebbe used to say the reason in Chabad it's called Yechidus. When a chassid goes to the Rebbe, it's called Yechidus. Literally, it's a private audience, Yechidus, like you're alone, nobody else is there. But he used to say that it's the time as ein Yechidah Shebenefesh is ich miskasher mit the zweite Yechidah Shebenefesh. It's the time that Yechidah meets Yechidah. You understand? And you know what that means? Yechidah meets Yechidah. Understand the avodah of the Rebbe when he's starting Yechidus. He has to be in a place that he's ready to connect to the Yechidah Shebenefesh of somebody because he's inside his Yechidah. That's why the biggest avodah is within yourself, not within the other person. I told you once, the Mittler Rebbe stopped Yechidus for 3 days because he said somebody came to him with a crazy Aveda, and he knew if somebody comes to him, he needs to help them, but he can only help them if he finds it in himself. And he couldn't find it in himself. That means it's concealed, it's unconscious, so he had to work 3 days to find it. And then when he found it in himself, he started Yechidus. Because Yechidah Shebenefesh is never threatened by anybody, it never judges anybody, it never puts you into a box so that I come out the bright one and you're the stupid one. I'm the Rebbe and you're the loser. That's not Yechidah. That's called control. Huh? He's trying to leave already 20 minutes and I can't. Yechidah lost nicht. The Yechidah Shebenefesh lost nicht. That's what happens. When you start learning Chassidus, so the Yechidah Shebenefesh, you try to go away, but the Yechidah lost nicht. There's nothing to do. You have 1,000 explanations. Everybody will tell you, nah, medafnish. Yechidah Shebenefesh knows everything. You can't fool it. You understand? So that's the moment that you touched infinity in yourself. Once you touch infinity, you heal. Because all healing comes from the place where there was no darkness ever. Not only there was no darkness, the darkness was part of your light. That's where all real healing comes from. There's lower forms of healing, and they're all powerful there, and they're all special. And everything should be cherished. It's not no extremes, and to be radical here is insensitive. But the real ultimate healing comes when you touch Chaya, and then when you touch Yechida. Chaya teaches you who you really are, not who you think you are. And Yechida touches the place where all darkness is transformed into light. Chaya you need to tell you who you really are. And that's what real Amunah is. Real Amunah doesn't mean you believe. Real Amunah means you see, your soul sees. Once your soul sees, you know who you are. You understand? The Baal Shem Tov never doubted if God exists. Why not? He didn't know about pain. I know about pain, and he didn't know about pain. Yeah. Why not? Because once you touch Chaya, you just know, you know who you are. You know what you're seeing. You know what you're not seeing. A healthy person doesn't doubt, do I love my kid or I don't love my child? Or maybe I don't love my child, because every father does sometimes, right? You say, this kid, take him. Not every father, a lot of fathers. Especially teenagers, you know? But if you're a healthy person, you don't doubt if you love your child. You don't. And if you do, you realize how much help you need. I am feeling all these things. You're feeling because you're having a bad day, because you're stressed. Fine. So go do exercise, take vitamins, take a nap. I don't know, drink a black coffee, watch a clip by Rabbi Y. I don't know, whatever. You'll figure it out. Chaya means you have to know who you are. If you don't know who you are, macht man sich meshiga. In the world of Seichel, there is a God, there's no God. I'm good, I'm bad, I'm evil, I'm almost good. You can't live like that. You have to go to Chaya. Amalek always creeps in. So you must have Chaya. Chaya is you see, you know, it's clear, it's pashat, even if I'm not feeling everything. Once you go to Yechida though, it's not just you see. In Yechida you're one. You don't just see, you're one. And every frequency of the soul is valuable. There's nefesh, there's ruach, there's neshama. Now I'm in a place of emotions. You have to honor that. Now I'm in a place of seichel. You have to honor that. We don't say once you go to Yechida, so kill nefesh, ruach, neshama. You don't know. If Yechida has to kill other parts, it's not Yechida. Yechida can honor emotion. Yechida honors intellect. Yechida honors experience, behavior. Yechida honors faith, commitment, because it is everything. It's not afraid of emotions. It's not afraid. I'm not afraid of your pain. You know why? I'm in your pain too. I'm not afraid of pain because I'm there too. Now this is very emotional stuff. It's very emotional stuff because these are not words. Because when you're dealing with levels of pain, it's not words. People feel very real pain. It's visceral pain. Those of you who are in touch with pain, everybody's in touch with pain, but those of you who are in touch with deep levels of pain, especially from events in your personal life, you know when that spaghetti hits the fan, it's more powerful than anything else. How do I know that Chassidus is true? How do I know? Huh? I'll tell you. Because in moments of insane pain, where there's nothing left, all the logic in the world is a joke, all the mathematics in the world is irrelevant. The pain is so gripping, it's so intense, it's so overwhelming. It's almost like you're being choked underwater, and the pain is so visceral and so real. And at that moment, you can't sell Baba Mises. You can't sell Baba Mises. And when I, or any of us, has the courage to allow the ego to die, and to allow the words of the Alter Rebbe, the words of the Rebbe to flow through us, that's where every fiber of my being experiences the authenticity of it. And I know that nothing else in the world comes close to that. Nothing else in the world can replace that. And then I could say, oh, I'm not objective. I grew up there, and I grew up in this type of family. I know. I got it. I know how skepticism works. I've been there. I know cynics. I know skeptics. I have a skeptic inside of me too. It's one of the clowns inside of me is a skeptic too. I also know how to be skeptical. I've seen enough corruption, enough stupidity, enough maiselach and baba maises, enough cover-ups in the frum community to know how to be skeptical. You can be skeptical.
That's a good cover.
Huh?
Skeptical is a bit.
Yeah, so skepticism, it's very powerful, and I'm objective. I could do that all day, all night. Right? But it doesn't get close. Skepticism doesn't get close to the truth that the Alter Rebbe touches. It's not even on the same. It's not on the same level.
Maybe it's right under it.
Yeah, it's another form of escape. Yechid is not afraid of anything. It's not afraid of pain. It's not afraid of skepticism. Why? Because in Atzmus Ein Sof, it's Taka Ein Noid Mulvada. Okay. Because it's the truth. Not the truth in words, it's the truth in reality. Truth in words is not truth. Apologize to your client. Huh? As your judgment.
Now you can tell them, I know everything. It's worth 20 minutes to be delayed to tell you a completely different thing.
Client will thank him.
Yeah.
Client will thank him.
Absolutely.
Oh, the client will thank him because what's going to come after,
Yeah.
it's an asach tifer.
20 minutes before it could miss the whole thing, whole session. There is a tool actually for all this.
Yeah. Huh?
Very deep. Thank you.
It hit the spot. The next share will be Thursday morning, 7:45. Our women's class is tomorrow, 9:30, right here. Ja, was macht er?
There is the Amalek just died within me, I'm not sure.
What the pituitary gland has to do with it?
You took Rabbi. Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
About Rome.
Yeah.
I didn't know there's so much secrecy hidden inside of you.
Huh?
I didn't know there's so much secrecy hidden inside of you.
Yeah.
So that's the time I have a shul one day.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Actually,
That's a lot of digging to do.
about just to tell Rabbi something that has deeply moved me once.
Yes.
Once I was in California in a very spiritual community. They have like in California they have crazy stuff. So one of the things that shocked me, there's what is called man's group, and what they do is every man confronts his fears. And how does he do it? He just basically sits surrounded by all other men, and he basically brings up the dirt from his soul. And then what they do, they actually go through this and create like a performance where, let's say, he identified few problems like a mother, father, or he stole something, whatever it is. So there are basically people that decided to be an actor.
And I see my wife keeps on calling me.
Actors for these roles. And then what they do, they play. And they
Can I donate something?
Not at the moment. I just have to take care of something. I'm sorry.
it goes on the
Oh man, it looks like Superman.
I think they cut it.